13 years after the murder of their son in a school gymnasium, Kendrick Johnson's parents have filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the county, against the sheriff, against the Crown Laboratory, GBI, certain members, and specifically several judges. I love when we shake the table. All right, you white motherfuckers, all eyes on me. This is the I Refuse podcast. I mispronounced the I Refuse podcast. I had to take my time with this one because it was very, very important that I get certain things right and do the research. You know, Google is free. Now I'm back. So, if you've been sleeping under a rock or living without Wi-Fi for a minute or without running water, Kendrick Johnson's parents, back in March, filed a 35-page document filing a lawsuit against several judges. Now, going through this 35-page document, I get it. Absolutely get it. So, for context, Kenneth and Jacqueline Johnson were the parents of Kendrick Johnson. These three black folks, lived down in Valdosta, Georgia. Kendrick Johnson was a student at a high school. Kendrick Johnson played sports, got good grades, and came from a two-parent household. And let's be clear, it is very important that we frame the right narrative. Given what we've seen the last 15, 20 years, it's very clear that when it comes to Black lives, that we get the narrative correct. So, anyway, Kendrick Johnson, in 2013, January specifically, was seen going into a gymnasium, the gymnasium at his high school, going halfway across the floor in frame, and then is not seen for a bit. Fast forward, he is found upside down in a rolled up gym mat in the corner of the gymnasium. Gym mats, along with a grouping of gym mats, he is swollen in the face. He is almost unrecognizable. He is without his shoes. And there are a lot of questions, right? So in real time, in 2013, in the couple years since then, it was publicized, the story that here's this kid that lost his shoe. Somehow, magically, his shoe ended up at the bottom of a rolled up gym mat. He leans in, he falls in, gets trapped, and then, gravity, of course, all the blood flows to the top of his head, and he dies. It was an accident. It was an accident. Here is where things get a little murky for me. By the time the state gets possession of his body, or he's found somewhere in there, his organs are missing, and his body is packed with newspaper. I'm still stuck. I've been stuck for about 10 years on how did this boy end up without his shoes on? And how is it one shoe is here, but the other shoe is missing? Then on top of that, there is a bloody shoe under the bleachers that doesn't belong to him. Right. So, stuck on the shoe part, the here is where it also, because really the parents are the only ones telling the truth at this point. And what they're sharing more context, including preceding Kendrick's murder. He got into a fight with one of the white boys that also went to the school on the school bus. I surmise that Kendrick won the fight because, according to Kendrick Johnson's parents, the father of the white boy, who they say also was allegedly a member of the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, allegedly, contacted them to invite their son to a redo fight with one of his sons. Like it's the Wild Wild West, right? You lost the duel, the original fight. Now you want the parents of Kendrick Johnson to send their son over to fight one of your sons again. That's a part. That's a huge part. Um, Also, as you lean in a little bit closer as to other details, you're like, on top of this boy being in this gym mat, upside down, without his shoes on, clearly staged, by the way. Because you got to remember, this is during school hours. And that is the same day, and I know it's during school hours because the team, I believe the basketball team, was set to go off to a tournament that was scheduled for later in the day. Active business hours, students up and down the hallways, and the school has a resource office with a resource officer on the premises. From the time that he was murdered to the time the resource officer responded, it's pretty quick. Should be pretty quick, right? The face already swollen. There's abrasions. There is contusions. There is all the variables that will lead a person to believe that there was blunt force trauma. Yet, from the onset, the narrative was no external injuries. This was an accident. There's no need to do an autopsy. And that is a narrative that started pretty much from the day the resource officer found him. The the crime laboratory, certain members of the GBI, certain members of the sheriff's office, certain members of the county. Right. There are parts of the filing that leads me to believe that the parents are pursuing RICO charges because there is a certain level of collusion that binds a lot of folks, a lot of authorities from the state and local level all the way up to the government level. You have judges, you have the GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigations. The same place that's alleged that the father of the two white boys, the brothers, was working for at the time, allegedly. So at some point, you're like, okay, when people are trying to place a certain narrative or a bug on the front end, and then you have other people who weren't there sticking to that, it is giving cover up. Now, remember, I told you earlier, Kendrick Johnson's organs were missing, and his body was stuffed with newspaper. Where they do that at? And I've gone to school with kids as a child, and I know that when sometimes when a parent's kid loses a fight, they want a rematch. And when you have a parent that is allegedly part of the system with significant amount of authority, and this is the South. Just because other parts of the country may be progressive doesn't mean there aren't still pockets in the country that still abide by, oh, well, we don't want you here. And just to prove, we will do anything by any means necessary. Then, now if you're just now joining me, I'm taking my time with this because I think the more people know as to how certain folks, particularly folks with authority, are using their authority to not only like confirm a certain bias, but also come together and when you have judges that deny submissions or deny or give judgments without due process, when they see that the plaintiff or the defendants, sorry, on the other side, are most likely people that they know. Do you see where I'm going with this? So, also, in addition to his body being found or acknowledged or confirmed as him without organs, there was surveillance cameras throughout the gymnasium and the school. By the time the footage made it to the news, all we ever got was a fixed angle. If you have cameras from each corner of the gym, why are we only looking at this part of the gym where there's nothing occurring? And on top of that, of the four angles, the same block of time is missing from those angles. Roughly an hour and a half. And they say that Kendrick Johnson's body was dragged throughout the school. There are parts of the video where Kendrick Johnson is seen running in and out of frame. It's almost as if he's trying to get away from something. See, and nobody ever thought Why is he the only one going into the gym, yet he's also the only one that never leaves? And for me, I love that the parents were not deterred by having their claims or their previous filings dismissed, because they're like, oh well, we know what's going on, because all up and through this entire hierarchy that include people that are supposed to facilitate and act in their role with respect to the Constitution and the amendment, roughly 14, 15 amendments that could possibly apply to this. You seem to move very funny when it comes to us. And we see who is on the other side. And this is something that's not just at the judicial level and the state level. The crime laboratory, it took the parents hiring an outside party to perform the autopsy for it to be done, first of all, the right way, and for it to show the actual truth. It wasn't no accident. Because first of all, you have to explain why this boy is without shoes on at his own school. And getting trapped upside down on the gym mat is not going to lead to you having marks and abrasions on your body. That boy was ambushed in that gym. Kendrick Johnson was ambushed. There's a part of me that's like, he was led there, or at some point during the day, leading up to that, he was probably invited there by someone that was a familiar face and possibly acted like a friend. And then he was ambushed. And I feel like him like pacing in the frame and out the frame was him literally taking on probably a few people. This is crazy. I think at some point it's going to take a lot of us to realize that how we live or how life is lived in our bubble is not reflective across other areas of the country. It starts off pretty minor. People alter things like the story, timelines, when people, the team was supposed to be leaving for the tournament. And then it gets a little larger. Like they really want you to believe one specific thing, and that's what it is. and how people use their positions of authority to influence or coerce people. Because you got to understand that, like, in some of these small towns, you know, Valdosta is probably smaller than Athens, and both both towns are smaller than Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta is pretty much the metropolitan core of Georgia. Everybody knows everybody. And when it's two black parents filing motions and filing complaints and filing lawsuits, I would say for the sake of moving the needle in the right direction when it comes to crime labs, the examiners, even the sheriffs, you have one job, and everybody in town knows what your job is. Kendrick Johnson's body was full of newspaper, and his organs were missing. Why'd you remove his organs? Are you trying to cover up that, that he was beaten, battered, and possibly stomped on? You have surveillance cameras in the school for a reason. Why is there almost 2 hours of footage from every angle missing? Like, I'm not like 100% like the best at like math, like trigonometry and shit like that, but you watch enough of these crime shows and stuff, hour and a half, almost 2 hours. And missing. When I say missing, like it's just gone. Which leads me to believe that the school is in on it too. Like, and for those of you that are not sure of how RICO works, I mean, maybe a new term to some folks, this sounds like a RICO. Essentially, a network of covering up something for the sake of absconding one from accountability. You have a school that has surveillance cameras that just remarkably just missed roughly 2 hours of footage in their own gymnasium. You have the school resource officer who was probably the first person to put the bug out there that it was an accident. And I wouldn't put it past him that probably led to Kendrick Johnson's organs being removed and putting newspaper into the body. Like, this is just wild. You know what I mean? This has got to be as wild as lynchings. Like, black people still mysteriously hanging from trees, still in the South. Because there's no explaining any of this. And looking somebody dead in the face and saying, "Oh, this is up to snuff. This is within protocol." and they got the name of every judge. At least 3 or 4 judges. We may not ever see the day that certain racist and supremacist adjacent structures are dismantled or defunded or unformed and restructured in respect to the Constitution and the amendments that's supposed to protect everybody. But I think a $10 billion lawsuit, which is $5 billion for a couple of things and $5 billion for some other things, is definitely going to shake the tree. And don't get it twisted. Don't think just because a judge was appointed by Biden and a judge was appointed by Obama that changes their makeup. No, that's for the people that are adamant about representation and adamant about, oh, well, if they speak a certain way that speaks to, the kind of platform and the kind of change we would like to see, but the reality turns out otherwise. There are a couple of examples in this filing, because clearly, not only was it bias, but there was also a certain level of prejudice. Like somebody's already in your ear. And somebody's already got you right where they want you. I hope the Johnsons keep their foot on the pavement. And I hope this $10 billion lawsuit, this filing, gets more eyes on higher levels. Wishful thinking that we're actually going to get something out of this. Because you got to understand, you're talking like circuit courts, lower courts. If we are at all lucky, I know. I mean, the current state of the Supreme Court, I don't know. Because Georgia is right next to Alabama, and there's a certain person up there that's from that area that looks like us that is usually the leader in things working against us. Just saying. It is. I've gone across a couple of things, a couple of nuances in this video. And I really want a lot of people to understand that, furthermore, when there is a motion or a campaign to block movement by us, cause a stay in several parts of the process that we're entitled to as citizens. We're entitled to as members of this country, taxpayers, as voting in the political process. As citizens of the United States, understand that there's a reason. There's a reason why there's pushback. Like they already have enough. The Johnsons, they already have enough that they have been holding on to since 2013. And to be here 13 years later and realize that there's been no accountability because there's been bias for the other side against us, and just about everybody white with authority has used that authority in this whole experience to disallow the family justice. And all the I'm gonna and all the Bells had to do was just take the L. It was theorized that one of the Bell boys was dating this white girl, and allegedly she was into Kendrick Johnson. And one of the Bell boys felt some kind of way, allegedly. Now, I don't know if one or both of the Bell boys was part of the team as well as Kendrick. But at this point in the video, I brought that up to get to another thing. You know, it's like we're already past the point where if the hate don't work, tell lies. And there are lies all up and through this, right? But on an interpersonal level, in regards to the shadow that is, they don't want you here. And the way that shows up in the room interpersonally is we're perceived as a threat. For some reason, in the same place as they are, whether it's in the neighborhood, whether it's in the community, whether it's at the table, whether it's in a high school, a brewing level of hostility and animosity that precipitates violence. All because you think your girl wants this dude. Allegedly. Anger issues, hostility, insecurity, and your daddy allegedly works for the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. I thought at the time allegedly he was a sheriff, which I can get into this whole thing all up and through here as to the history behind like policing authorities. It started off as something completely more catastrophic before, during, and after the Jim Crow era. But we're already about 30 something minutes into this video. And I don't want to overload y'all, but all of this is at play in this journey. You think something or you perceive something, therefore Kendrick Johnson is a threat. You most likely lost the fight on the bus. And instead of bringing your sorry ass son over on neutral ground, you call the parents to send their son over. Absolutely not. And when that didn't work, you most likely you most likely started doing one of the most brainless things that have occurred in this whole situation. You probably put a bug in one or two of your son's ears. And they most likely knew the surveillance cameras were there. But you can't win them all. You can't win them all. Like y'all just can't take us. Y'all just can't take us. Like y'all think y'all slicker than a can of oil. You think you're the smartest egg in the batch. But it's just not going to work out the way you want to. Like, trust and believe there's no statute of limitations on murder. And now that we're at this point where I feel like all of this very well satisfies for a RICO charge. Like, corruption in this country is not new, especially when you got that kind of thing going. Damn right, $10 billion lawsuit. And that's definitely going to shake up some shit. Now, I don't know if Georgia operates in the same vein as Texas with the ability to have some things be private to where the federal government can't intervene. But if I were the Johnsons, I'd really push a lot harder than I was able to or did before. Because this shit is fishy as fuck. This shit, absolutely not. So I wanted to get up on here and talk to y'all and take my time because I think the more people know, as the nuances and the variables, especially in positions of power. And they play in y'all face all day, every day. That's what they do. So, thank you for joining me on Miss Fox Refuse podcast. Kendrick Johnson will receive justice. And also, although I think this may be a reach because this happened in Texas, the husband and, the widower and the family of Tamla Horsford should do the same thing. I'm Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. Get into the I Refuse podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Season 7 is available everywhere. Follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Get into Usual Suspects podcast. Abstract and I will be recording this week. Well, we're back to our regularly scheduled program. She will most likely have more to add to this. Which is why I love having a show with her for, a lot of reasons, but she has her feet to the ground on a lot of things. She blows my mind every episode. But anyway, continue to support and follow and love on original Black content creation, such as me, such as Abstract, and such as the I Refuse podcast. And I will catch you guys later. Fendi, like the bag.
This is the I Refuse